Hey, so here we are again, and it's Saturday the 18th of November 2023. I'm just going to keep, as I said, keeping on. This is what I call this is, again, all of these issues, I risk repeating myself. Oh, Jesus, I didn't get a drink. What about it? I risk repeating myself, because I don't know how many people are going to see these in isolation or actually view the entire series. And of course, without meaning to sound like a self-promoter, if you were to view the entire series, you would see you'd see the chronology, the timeline, the genealogy of how these issues came to be. But of course, I'm always updating them to fill in the parts of the story. So this is, again, just to prove how absolutely gendered and insane the family law court is with respect to disbelieving women. This is in 2017, and Me Too or no Me Too, I'm pretty sure that came a year later. Irrespective, this is in a modern democracy, in an evolved modern democracy. And so when you get a family law court ruling, there's a bunch of citations down the front of it where judges are obliged, by law, to refer to precedent in law. And so I'm looking through here, and we have law from the year 2000 all the way up to 2012. And of course, the cases cited are always not the real names. They're approximations, and they even do it phonetically. So this Judge Leanne Turner was ported in to get back to where we were in the architecture of the dispossession of my little 5-year-old girl, who, by the way, I just got a text from because I've only, it's been a whole week since I've been managed to even get a word from her at all, not on the phone. And so I FaceTimed, and I FaceTimed again, and was put off again, and said, well, look, I'll send a taxi like I did last weekend, because her father's done this manoeuvre where he's put an AVO on in March last year, which is 2 years of her life from 9 to 12, in which she nearly died in a house fire and sustained a severe injury, a burn to her knee, which by logic could have been incendiary and literally brought the house down in flames and killed her from smoke inhalation and whoever else was in the house, and God knows if he was even at home. He plays in 2 bands. One of them is called MC Toons, TOONS, that's, Mark, what's his name? And the other one's appropriately enough, Los Romeos Oxidados, which apparently translates as the Rusty Romeo. Yeah, even that. It's ironic, isn't it? So this is from Judge Leanne Turner, and I'm going to Canberra this week on a train, and I'm going to ask the Federal Attorney General to fire her, and to fire Lucia Vardenega, who was really the only point of proper orientation that this woman, Leanne Turner, this magistrate, who had no knowledge of our case whatsoever prior to ruling on it. And again, I've told you in previous videos that she halved the trial date from 4 to 2. And so that disallowed me, in what I call the architecture of dispossession, it disallowed me to get updated affidavit material from his ex-partners, who he abused in identical ways that he abused me, and both of whose evidence had been admissible if Leanne Turner wanted to make it so. But she used just ridiculous mechanisms, tech specs of the law, including that if an affidavit's older than 1 year, it shouldn't be admitted and it should be updated, even though this affidavit was describing a pattern of behaviour that happened years before and was corroborated by the subpoenaed New South Wales police record of the father of my child, who'd abused every woman he'd ever been with. And so you see these things that are called catchwords up the top, and she's chosen to make a lot of it. And as I've tried to describe, well, I haven't tried, I have clearly described with great detail the chronology, the timeline of the hideous array of factors that were bearing down on me in 2016 and 2017 that were well outside the realm of my control, that included the death of my very much loved mama from I don't know who you are, Menignan, but you better be good. Don't stop here unless you want a serious ride. So this included the death of my mother in June 2016, and 12 weeks later her father, her stepbrother, my godfather, murdering his wife after 45 years of marriage by sticking a pillow over her head on the 13th of September 2016 out at Milperra, Warren Rogers, murdering Anne, and simultaneously, unbelievably, Shakespeareanly, my own womb, my reproductive system, grew a tumour that just got bigger and bigger and moved down, prolapsed into my cervix, and caused me to open up, just shedding blood the size of my hand 24/7. And then Royal North Shore, in their infinite fuckwittery and stupidity, put me on a 5-week-long emergency public hospital wait list. That's the emergency surgery wait list, on which I was going to die. So 3 days later, I nearly did in a private system, but it cost me $18,000. So I had to sell my house to pay for that. And that was in the following year, just after I had stood in November 2016 and self-defended without a lawyer in this family law court case. And this is so mum dies, like as if grieving your own parents' death, particularly because she had such a tragic life as well. She'd had Parkinson's followed by cancer, and her 2 other daughters, who were not me, I'm the eldest for 3, chose to sue each other and fight as she died. And then not long after she died, my father even jumped on to sue one of my sisters, even though she's a single mum. I mean, the story is just unbelievable, really, and unfortunately, it's not a story. I mean, in as much as it's a story because it's a narrative. It's a true story, and every single one of the things I'm saying are backed up by what you call evidence. They're written annexures and exhibits. And if you want lots of exhibits, again, I would advise you right up the top of this to go over to Instagram and type my name in, because there are 1,600 photos and videos of my children's previously absolutely adored, always adored by me, but previously living with me, adored lives, where they had piano lessons and tennis lessons and ice skating lessons and skiing lessons and lots of hugs and cuddles, most importantly, and lots of books and lots of learning, and life was good, and we danced and laughed, and I explained the world every moment of the day that I could, which is, how you teach a mind to learn. So I taught them how to be autodidacts, they teach themselves, didacts teach. So I'm going to keep reading from this just fucking disgusting set of parenting orders. It is ordered by way of final parenting orders from a woman, Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner from Brisbane, who I once sacked permanently alongside Dr. Lucia Vardanega from the Family Law Court, because both of them disbelieved not one but 3 women who had been partnered to this man for 4 years each respectively, and had the identikit pattern of abuse from him. And neither of these women believed this, even though it was over on the police record where the police had taken out the avios. And so she rules my child away to this man. So in November 2016, mum's died in June. 12 weeks later, in September in 2016, the murder happens. I simultaneously start bleeding, and then in November 2016, I stand without a lawyer and self-defend against a total narcissist and psychopath called Ian Little, who's literally, as his wife's affidavit says, his physical abuse was occasional, but his mental and verbal and emotional abuse was constant, and including on the occasion that he chipped her coccyx bone by kicking her in front of her children on Christmas Day because he staggered home pissed and full of cocaine from a party at Penny Stockley's house, and she had to kick him out. And the sun had already come up, so she thought that was appropriate. And of course, he slept through, couldn't be roused from his own children's Christmas, and so woke up and abused them all for unwrapping the presents, little tiny children, 2 years of age and 4 years of age, respectively, Roxy and Louie. And so then a fight ensued because you can't avoid one with him, as Kelly MacDonald Payne will be subpoenaed to say as well, because she copped it as well. And I think Penny Stockley gave him short shrift recently. I think she found out he was up somebody else. Like, he was literally within... so he ditched after using this bogan, Kelly MacDonald Payne, to bring up my child. And I say she's a bogan because she screamed in front of me and my child and care centre staff that I was just a fucking birth mother, in her broad accent, when she's never been to a tertiary institution, and her children, unlike mine, weren't up the top of the state, and she hadn't run a federal government regulated childcare centre like me, and so she didn't have a bunch of references saying that I was a great childcare provider and, bought myself several houses if she hadn't bought herself any. It's all from mum and dad, I believe. And so this and then, kids got tattoos on them, it sells at 17 and stuff, and this bogan in Engadine, down in ScoMo's land next to Macca's, is screaming at me in the Engadine childcare centre that I'm just her birth mother. I mean, when she's keeping my child from me against family law court parenting orders. And this piece of work, this negligent fuckwit, Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner, licensed Ian Little to get away with all of this and do it. And so it's established because, as I said before, John Howard and Pauline Hanson in 2007 brought in a reform to the Family Law Court Act after being... campaigned to by men's rights groups, and fair enough that they wanted access to the children, understandably, unless, of course, they were assaulting the mother, and a lot of them were. And so a lot of that was the reason why the women were fleeing, even though they, a lot of the time, were not paid any child support at all. And they were fleeing in droves. And so that's been reversed recently, and I've helped to do that. But what the Federal Attorney General, Mark Dreyfus, hasn't done, and again, this is all in other previous pieces to camera that I've done here on this page, what they haven't done is done the logical thing, which is to criminalise parental alienation. That's the theft of a child by another parent, and then the stealing of them and the brainwashing of that child to the point where they honestly believe that they don't, that the parental alienation is defined by the child honestly believing that the child doesn't love or care for or want to know the parent anymore. And so Labor, to its credit, has reversed the presumption of shared care, where it's immediately presumed that you have to have pretty much shared time between two splitting up parents, even if one of the parents has assaulted the other one, and that was the case for me twice, except in one case one of them died. Try telling your little boy who's just met his father after 3 or 4 years of not seeing him because his father headbutted you, ambushed on a street at Ettalong. Try telling your child that his father has died 5 weeks after he met him. Anzac Day 2014. So all of this, again, is elaborated in other pieces I've done to camera. But so I'm going to read, I'm going to keep reading just to show you the mendacity and the outrageousness. You can't believe that you're in a democracy where women have the right to be in any way like men do. When you read a female judge in the family law court, even though she's from Brisbane, she somehow ended up in Sydney, as I said, and she cut the trial date days from 4 days to 2, and that disallowed me to get updated affidavit evidence from Lindy Green, his ex-wife, and of course the affidavit was there, and it was perfectly clear that if I'd had 4 days, I could have just phoned up Lindy and gone and got another one updated, and would have had to ask her, please, can you immediately run down to a JP and get it signed and witnessed, because that's what an affidavit is. So it's a bit of a pain in the ass to people. So in these situations, of course, like in most situations in law, you're called upon to make people uncomfortable, unfortunately, because it's inconvenient, essentially. And and also people, as his other partner said, Michelle Daly, who's an iCare or was an iCare senior New South Wales government bureaucrat, she said, I don't want to get, and this is on a voicemail, so this is, again, this was or could have been and should have been, which is why I want Leanne Turner fired from the Brisbane and every other jurisdiction in Australia, because voicemail evidence is admissible because the person knows that they're being recorded when they leave it. Whereas if you sneak it, you've got to be the Australian Federal Police, the AFP, investigating a drug ring or a tax avoidance cartel or something, and have a special subpoena in order to sneak that recording in to make it admissible to a court of law. So this is all completely admissible evidence which Federal Magistrate Turner egregiously, unbelievably, negligently chose to leave out, because it didn't square with what Dr. Lucia Vardenegger, who, again, she shouldn't be working as a psychologist, who had the opportunity to not only read my affidavit and the affidavit of Linda Green and Michelle Daly's voicemail, but also the New South Wales subpoenaed police record of Ian Little. So both of these women had more. I mean, both of these people, let's just call them, but it just bites even harder to me that they happen to also be female, had the ample opportunity to read, to know what this man exposed his children to, because the family law court centres around the rights of the child and the responsibilities of the parent. The parent doesn't have any rights, unbelievably. You would think so, but no. And so yesterday I read you the part of this transcript where the judge asks me in her ruling, she cited part of the transcript of the 2-day court case where she had asked me for my opinion on how I thought that I had presented to her and to the court. And she was the only person in the court other than Lucia Vardenegger, because I didn't have a lawyer, and this is exactly why I'm touting for legal funds, because I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't know that, and also because I was working 50 hours a week, Monday to Friday in a daycare, so I couldn't just shut it and go down to the court and get a subpoena, because you have to get a subpoena issued, you have to ask for what's called leave of the court. So I had to get leave granted to get a subpoena. You can't do it online. These days they want everything done online, particularly after COVID, and they want it all uploaded at the portal. It's called Comports, the Commonwealth Government portal, which is very convenient for people who are good at, putting PDFs together perfectly. But, it's cost me hundreds and hundreds of dollars to do all of this at office work. And again, like I told you on Friday, they bounced me after 2 weeks, 2 whole weeks, even though I went into the court and went, no, look, is this right? Can you check my paperwork, with a guy called Nate Ross? And then Register Bucknell bounced it. The Bucknell bounce I got this week. So I'm going to read some of the reasons, because these are reasons. So in a ruling, a judge, in case you don't know, if you're a lawyer watching, you know all about this, great. But if you're just a lay person like me, you don't know about this until it happens. And so a ruling is where the judge makes findings, sort of the same thing, findings of evidence. And so they have to refer to their evidence each time they make a finding. And so I read to you yesterday where she asks me to reflect on how I might have occurred to her in the 2 days instead of the 4 that she gave me. And I told her, and you couldn't see yesterday, I won't reiterate it, you can just watch it, it's all there. That's the whole point of doing it to camera, so it's captured and no one can verbal or misconstrue me. And if they do, I've got evidence there. And so I essentially said, a long-winded version of words to the effect of, I'm very frustrated that this court isn't listening to 3 women, not just one, not just me, but 3 women who've all been assaulted. And because I'd been kind and shared my child with her father for a significant amount of time, 1 or 2 days a week, he had a claim. So because I was kind and fair and honourable, just in the same way as I was regarding Alice with Tim Friedman, like I was kind. And because I was kind, they had a claim. So she drills in on my character, like she does, like this is supposed to be about my parenting. And given that I'd also run a family daycare service, I had references from my daycare clients. So I'd parented their children 50 hours a week in some cases. You know, some people were in for 1 or 2 days, some people were in for the whole 5 days at 10 hours a day. So I had a lot of evidence saying that I wasn't just good to my own children, but I was good to other people's children professionally, and also from my once, at that point in time, still talking family, Elise Johnson and Leslie John Farrow-Pryke, who also, there's nothing wrong with her. She's a great mum. But nonetheless, this Neanderthal, Leanne Turner, she doesn't choose to focus on my parenting whatsoever. She just starts to drill down and assassinate my character. She says that in 2014, the mother sent various messages. I'm just going to keep reading some of this stuff. This is what constituted how she takes a 5-year-old daughter. Why, in her deranged world, that she took a 5-year-old child off a woman who'd run a daycare, a federal government-regulated daycare service, for 50 hours a week for 4 years until the year before our court case, you know, literally, and takes her off her. And she cites the things that I say about the world, my worldview, essentially, and my character as being, it's nothing to do with my parenting at all. She says, in 2014, the mother sent various messages to friends, family, employers, partners, and ex-partners of the father, accusing the father of being abusive and an unfit parent. Well, he was, and he is. And you can see all the evidence for that down my page. He constantly leaves my children alone, to the point he also left so negligent when, whether he was there or not, I'll never know. My daughter had her leg burnt and it could have started a house fire because she fell asleep next to a heater in winter last year, and she got a massive scar across her knee, and the bruising went all the way down her leg, and of course she could have died in a house fire and killed anyone else who was in the house as well if it had ignited. And the pain levels woke her up, but not before she was so significantly burned. And of course, again, you'd have to wonder how exhausted she was to sleep through that level of pain before she got that badly burnt, which is all on a photo that this state of New South Wales DCJ facts docs, call them whatever you will this year, have done nothing about, and I've told them either. So she basically says I communicated in a first world democracy to other people who I had every right to, and told them what he was like, and that he was an abusive parent, particularly because when my daughter was not even 1 year old, he stole her one night. I expressed some milk into a bottle, some breast milk into a bottle, and thought that he was just going to take her for overnight for a Friday night and give me a break at the end of a 50-hour working week with 4 infants. But he stole her for the whole weekend to a woman called Sonia Rogers' house. And Sonia Rogers, if you look up the West Australian ASIC record, which I did, because I was like, who has stolen my child at 11 months? Who would do that? She's on the breast and I'm her mother. And she is the heiress to a $250 million fortune from a... It's just, this story is just... seriously, someone should write it up. People keep telling me to, but I'm really quite traumatised every time. Like every day is a night is living it, because the children aren't back with me. So it's reiterated, which is what complex PTSD is. It's when you've got trauma that keeps going on because it wasn't just a one-off event that happened and then you could put it in the past. You live with it every day, and that's what my diagnosis is. And so this these people steal my little 11-month-old baby and take her to a penthouse suite. This is no joke, like a huge, right smack bang in the middle of Bondi Beach. You know, hugely wealthy, and she's derived her wealth because she's the only unmarried child of a woman called Marilyn, with 2 Y's, that is, if you want to look it up. Marilyn, and her surname's not Rogers, it's something else, and I'll remember it in a minute. But she, if you just Google this, Marilyn with 2 Y's, and then Google Midland Bricks in West Australia. So Marilyn, so Sonia's mother, Marilyn's father, and his brother founded a company called Midland Bricks, and they virtually built the whole of Western Australia. So they had huge, she was the heiress to a $250 million fortune. So she was driving a 2-seat, sunroof Jag, and so was he. And they took my baby to a penthouse suite, and it took me ages to work out where she was and phoning around people he knew and everything. So, like, this, none of this, of course, is included as what would motivate a woman to go, what the fuck are you doing? And you've got my baby, and you've stolen her, and where is my child? And I don't even know this person you've taken them to, and where have you taken them to? And she says, it is noted by the family report writer, remember, that's the other negligent idiot I want struck from the register, Lucia Vardenega, g'day, I keep sending these to you, that the mother did not dispute her behaviour. Well, no, I went around and said, give me my daughter, my baby back. Well, like, when I told this to my psychiatrist, Dr. David Starrick, he went, oh, what, really? Like, he couldn't believe it. Whereas you've got a federal magistrate who thinks she's king shit, obviously, and she thinks that my behaviour as a mother is out of order, chasing my own baby down when my baby's been removed to a location a location unknown to me, or locations unknown to me by a person unknown to me. When my daughter was 11 months, I mean, she couldn't even walk, and she was on the breast. And so she cites my reaction to that as being a problem, because just to add just another ironic layer to this story, as soon as I found out the name of the person who had taken my daughter away with, Sonia Rogers, I found out, New is her mother's surname, Marilyn New, Marilyn with 2 Y's, not an I, New. And so I started digging, and it didn't take long with Google in 2014 to find out that Marilyn New, irony of all ironies, had established not a halfway house, but actually a place in Perth, or in Western Australia, but near Perth. I can't remember. I mean, it's 9 years ago now, and I haven't bothered to relook. But this is savage irony, it was a place for women who were escaping abusive men. And so I'm like, great, well, I've got this, you can go over to Instagram and listen to it, this email from him that he left his wife in the year 2000 going, you fucking cunt, you're going to pay for this, you bitch, because his wife had gone to the police after he assaulted her and chipped her coccyx bone by kicking her on Christmas Day. So he leaves her an email and says, so I'm like, well, this is going to be easy. I'm just going to send all of this dossier of information to Marilyn New, Sonia Rogers' mum. And I did. So Sonia was promptly instructed by her mother, who's worth an absolute packet, and has left the company in only that daughter's name because the other daughters have got married. So the mother's not stupid enough to risk the family fortune being broken up in marriage if the marriages break up. She's left it in the name. She's co-chair, if you like. Look up the ASIC record. You can just read all about it. That's what I did. So it was easy to find out where to send this information to as well. So I just sent the dossier on over and said, look, this is who your daughter's with. And by the way, they've got my baby. And so that, of course, triggers this thing to have a problem with me. And this is all being reported. This is supposed to be a parenting trial about how good a parent you are. And I've got, my own sister and father at the time saying that I was great and they've known me forever and they'd seen my children up close on all the times. They only ever came to me once or twice. I always drove up to them, even though I was a single mum with 3 kids and they were all supported and wealthy and I wasn't. And so she says in 2014 I sent various messages to the family and employers of Sonia Rogers and her mother warning them about this man and who he was and who he actually still is. And then it says, it is noted by the family report writer that the mother did not dispute her behaviour and justified herself by claiming that she felt compelled to inform Ms. Rogers and her mother, that's Marilyn New, of Mr. Little's transgressions as any parent would want to know. These are the exact words. Sorry, boring dead air time there. As any mother would want to know if their daughter was involved with such a violent man as Mr. Little. Well, I'd left pregnant. And his rich Jewish wife had kicked him out of the marriage after 2 years, and his intelligent bureaucrat, Michelle Daly, New South Wales bureaucrat, had kicked him out because her father cried, apparently, when her father was taking her to a hospital for a knee surgery one day, and she'd invested lots of money in Ian's business, pizza business, to try and get it up and running, and yet he wouldn't even stop and take her to surgery when she desperately needed knee reconstruction. And so her father, who was in his 80s by then, was driving her in her late 40s and weeping and saying, please leave him. He doesn't love you. If you've done all of this for him and he can't even pick you up and take you to the hospital. So, I mean, there are those other levels, those what you would call metaphysical levels of someone's behaviour that show, or their lack thereof, that show a lack of basic empathy and care and love for a human being, which of course should all be red flags to anybody in a court who's looking at a man's behaviour, not focusing the lens on moi. Me, the childcare provider, and the I've got all the references from my family and my nannying clients, and I own property and I haven't assaulted my previous partners, and he hasn't got any of those things and he has done all of those things, right? So this bitch, Leanne Turner, turns her energy on me. I mean, if you're a reader and you like Helen Garner, like I very much love Helen Garner, she kind of really, she's a genius for all sorts of reasons, not the least of which is because she just does not resile from hard truths, and she tells them in such well-nuanced ways that she genuinely tries to be fair to everybody's perspective. You know, it's called the Rogerson model, I think Jordan Peterson says in his 12 Rules for Life book, you know, where when somebody is in disagreement with you, you sit there and listen to them, and then you start by reflecting back to them in words, repeating what you think they said and what you think their perspective is. And they say, yes, you got this bit right, no, you didn't get this bit right. And so you sit there and you're able to calibrate perspectives. And of course, that's what you would hope that the family law court was like. You would hope that courts were, and they say they try to move towards these mediation models so that they're not combative. But here you have, again, in 2017, a female. I'm sorry if I cry a lot here, but my diagnosis is actually major clinical depression, because I've just lost absolutely everything. And for years and years, and it's very hard to not get upset. It's very, very, very hard. I live like this, you know, which is extraordinarily painful. And of course, I've got all these reports from a psychiatrist and psychologist saying if she had her children back, she would be okay. So in order to kill me, they've both kept them away, you know, with the famous injunction to me from Ian Little to fuck off back to Tasmania and die. So sorry, just give me a minute. I haven't pulled this out for a long while, and, you know, 6 years on, it's just fucked. Like, I had the audacity at one point to say, yeah, well, look, I think I'm the superior parent here, because I haven't assaulted my last 3 partners. I've run a daycare and I've parented lots of, you know, achieving children, and he hasn't. And so if I had to break it down, yeah, I'd say I was a superior parent. So she cites me calling myself that as if I've got some messiah complex. Even though I say, during cross-examination, the mother referred to Mr. Friedman as a not particularly well-regarded character. Like, if you knew what everybody else thinks, I would say that's an extremely moderate assessment. And you can go and ask for yourself. Don't take my word for it. And then she says in cross-examination, when asked, you know, so she brings all of my personal relationships with men and how I conducted them by saying, well, he's an asshole because look what he did to all those women, and he did. And he's an asshole because look what he did to all those other people and women, and he did. And so she doesn't even go and try to verify or validate any of my claims, because, of course, if they were true, then why shouldn't I accept them? I thought they were true, and I certainly have evidence for them. And so it's basically a character assassination. In fact, I'm going to give you the in a text exchange. This was brought in a text exchange between the parties. The mother wrote, "This time you chose the wrong woman to fuck with. I've got balls of steel and I'll break them over your head if you don't start to treat me with a modicum of respect. You left that child in my womb after I had the foresight and generosity to offer you a 50% payment on a vasectomy in 2003. So you will start to treat me properly or I will break you." And I mean it. I mean it. So I said that to him because literally he'd said he didn't want any more children. I didn't want any more children. I love my children dearly now that they're here, but at the time, like, you know, we were in our 40s and neither of us could afford them, and I could see how he was treating me. And so I rang up and like massaged him through. I rang Randwick Hospital and was like, "What do you do to get on the vasectomy list?" You know, like, because I said, I can't take the pill, and so if we don't want to get pregnant, you're going to have to, you know, have a vasectomy. And he's like, "Oh, I don't want to touch the crown jewels, the family jewels." And I'm like, "Well, I don't want to have abortions." Ouch. Ever had one, men? Hurts. Here and here, it hurts. And then it says the mother in 2015 family report interviews described the father as being very nice when he is nice, but also being a revolting and appalling man when he's not. And that's an absolutely accurate assessment on the word of every other woman who'd ever been with him. And I say, Mr. Little, so then she quotes me as saying, "Mr. Little has behaved atrociously to other females." Well, he had. And so these are the reasons. I'm actually going to give it to you because you should be able to. So then she says that I had no insight into the inappropriateness of my behaviours as an adult about a man who was revolting to me and assaulting me and his ex and the ex between, the woman in between, Michelle Daly, between Lindy Green and I, and stealing my child away to this rich woman, Sonia Rogers' house. And so because I'm daring to stand up for myself and open my big fat trap and flap it, you know, go girls, you keep it up. Just keep on doing it. Because, of course, they are murdering you for not having a bag on your head over in Iran. And look at Afghanistan, hey? People literally falling off the aeroplane to try and get on it when the Taliban closed in and the Brits had to take the last flight out. I saw that again the other night. I mean, literally people dropped, you know, to their deaths off, rather than live under these male regimes of this misogyny. When put to the mother in cross-examination that when people disagreed with you or feel that you or your children have been wronged, you particularly feel the need to defend your position or the children's position. That was put to me in cross-examination. The mother replied, "No, I've actually been called a very good sport by people, and people who I've collaborated with. I've been called a fair and judicious and perspicacious person. I've got third-party evidence that attests to that, and that says that I'm also a lovely, caring, wonderful, well-rounded mother and childcare worker. And so if there is a fishing expedition going on here to try to portray me as intractable and constantly in need of an argument, it's bullshit, with respect. I take everything on its merits. If something has been done that's unjust," I'm reading from what I said to the judge. I'll give you the page number. It's page number 26. And I'm going to give you the ruling number. It's Little and Farrow-Pryke. It should have been Farrow-Pryke and Little because I was the moving parent, but he beat me down to the court because he worked in town and I couldn't shut my daycare, so he launched first. And it is CYC 595/2014. So you can actually go to the federal court now. There's absolute transparency. I am authorising you to, given that the nation of Australia has done absolutely nothing. in the public or personal interests of myself or my children, or the public interest, to uphold a woman's rights to a meaningful relationship with her children, and more importantly, a child's relationship to her educational and loving mother, which is what another judge called me, an educational and loving mother. And that was a judge in 2021, after I'd had all the breakdown and everything that ensued from this piece of work. I say things as I see them. I call the things as I see them, and I always have. Miss Vardenegger said that I presented as a direct and outspoken person. Well, I mean, and what's the problem with that? You've got literally a pussy-grabbing president who's about to try and run the United States from a prison cell next year. And yet, because I'm a woman with a mouth standing up for myself and quoting what other people say about me, that I'm forthright, no bullshit, and I tell it like it is. You know, I said I will go out of my way, and I've raised $80,000 for Aboriginal organisations to help with this and that, and I'm a realist, I'm also a pragmatist, and I'm an honest person, and I say, I do call it as it is. And Vardenegger said that I present as direct and outspoken. And I said, well, yeah, she got that right. It's not against the law, by the way, I say. And we just, last time I looked, those qualities are valorised in males. I literally say this. And then I say, and I think we just elected Trump, or the United States just elected in the free world the first venal pussy-grabbing person to the presidency. So I then go on to sort of say, like, what the fuck are you doing trying to talk to me about my outspokenness as any reason at all for ruling on my parenting of my child? I mean, it's just absolutely insane. And so she rules my child, like I'm just randomly flipping here because I haven't marked this up. I haven't pulled this out for a long while. But you can, again, go back and hear it from the beginning. And so then she goes to the prospect that my daughter would, which she then ruled her allowed to do, to go and move in with Ms. Payne, Miss Kelly McDonald Payne, this, again, bogan who's, you know, kids are tattooed at 17, working at Kmart, and yelled at me that I was just a birth mother and hasn't got any education and is drunk, falling over asleep in gardens at parties on reports of other people. And they've only just become a couple, like they're not even living with each other. And so this piece of shit, Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner, goes and licenses them to take my child away from me at 5 years of age. And a year and a half later, you know, having lost the house and the womb and still trying to get over mum and her stepbrother's, you know, mum dying, which I never will get over. And I will never understand her stepbrother, my godfather, murdering his wife after 45 years, nicest guy on earth. It's like they're all so nice, just like the guy who, my daughter's ex-school, St Andrew's Cathedral School, 3 weeks ago, the hockey player Paul Thyssen, who murdered as 24 years old, was a hockey teacher there who'd been to the school and had been a prefect at the school, and murdered another teacher there of water polo, 21-year-old woman, Lily James. And he was the nicest guy too. And these, like, they're all the nicest guy. It's just like, so, you know, just going to dive off here because I've given you the actual citation. I've given you the ruling, name and number, and you can go and look it up and read it for yourself, which I seriously suggest you do. If you want any more of an illustration as to why Leanne Turner and Lucia Vardenegger should be fired permanently, and anyone espousing their draconian antique mentality, a sexist, disgusting, misogynist mentality, where they're basically assassinating my character and how I choose to deal with other adults, as if it's got anything to do with all of the evidence for the love that I have for my children. You know, particularly at that stage, my 100%, I never used it or was ever addicted to any narcotics, and certainly was not a user of alcohol at that stage. I mean, hitting lockdown by yourself, having had everything I've described happened to me, and then got stuck in the world's first COVID-19 border closure on top of everything else, and partner leaves and everything. Yeah, I did drink then, and it's just. So, like, there's nothing wrong with me as a parent, and my children are happy and successful, And my own parents says it, my own sister says it, my own daycare client says it. But this mendacious bitch chooses federal magistrate Leanne Turner and Lucia on the suggestion of Lucia Vardenega, a so-called psychologist, chooses to take my feminine character, my femininity, my personal character, that was a conflation of all of those terms, obviously, apart in order to say that I'm not a good mother. There's absolutely nothing in her ruling about the love of my child. The only thing, Lucia Vardenega is so stupid and facile that she actually fell hook, line and sinker for the, seductive ways that he was a similar age to her as well. And he definitely does it to everyone, trust me. There's one along every 5 minutes like a Bondi tram. And he's good at it. He's a psychopath, so he knows how to seduce and the art of the sophisticated seducer, but behind closed doors is absolutely abusive to everyone, to the way that to the point where they don't know each other. Like, I didn't know Lindy, his ex-wife, until I split up with him and came looking for her saying, did you experience any of his behaviours? And she's like, boy, yeah, have I got something to tell you? And, out it all comes. And then I, went looking for the woman in between, Michelle Daly. Like, can we talk? And she's like, yep, I don't want to get involved in this court case. I don't want to dredge up the memories of what happened to me. This is all over at Instagram. It's on Facebook. I've left the recordings there on public. You can go and listen to them. And again, this was all admissible evidence. She goes, I don't want to dredge up the evidence, the memories of what happened to me the night my head hit the floor and I had to go to the police. Breathe, right? I woke up talking to my children in my dreams today again, and I barely get any sleep, as you can see. That's the USB stick with the whopping great big affidavit on it that they rejected because I didn't write every single day and date that he's violated my children in the last 3 years. They're going to make me write every single day, go back through the calendar and work out when I was supposed to pick her up and drop her off and on what date under what subsection. Like, as I'm saying this, by the way, there's a pain in my heart. Like, I literally am going to die of a broken heart. I'm sorry, just give me a minute. I'm on beta blockers to slow the action of adrenaline because I wake up when I can sleep at all, and I woke up talking to my little girl. I was physically talking to her and woke myself up talking and saying, well, I'll see you in a minute, okay? I haven't seen her for 11 months at all. Because nobody criminalises the stealing of children. It's so basic. If these people went to jail for this, or if they had a $400,000 fine, in Friedman's case, he has at least $12 million worth of real estate and all sorts of other estate property as well. But Ian's got bugger all and drinks most of it, but he has got superannuation and a good wage. And so if he had an impost put on him, and if Friedman had a massive impost put on him, and so this is why I'm now going to try it through the parens patriae section of the Supreme Court. And if that doesn't work, I'm just going to try a straight-out negligence claim for infliction of harm, of mental and emotional harm, because I can easily prove it. I've got psychiatrists and psychologists who are saying this woman is harmed from what these people have done, and she's got no underlying, she's not psychotic, she's not bipolar, she's not schizophrenic, she's just... the grief. You don't take children from their mother. Not a loving mum. You don't, like, how am I supposed to go about, how is anybody in this situation supposed to go about their day. I mean, I've told you before, in no particular order, the ones that I've met. One of them is a guy called Paul, and he's an IT worker who travelled the entire world working for big corporations on big things like the Olympics. And, he's a highly intelligent guy. Every single night I had him to dinner earlier on this year, he drank 4 litres of wine. He was just shit-faced. And then the husband of the woman that I worked for, who was a lawyer, and I looked after their twins, he hadn't seen his older son from his first marriage for 4 years, and he was broken. He was a lovely Irish guy, and he did the back end for one of the state premiers in lockdown. So there's a lot of work going on, lots of communication in lockdown, and he was broken. He was sad, like he carried around with him a cloud mine's not so much a cloud as at this point it's obviously turned into its own weather system and feels like it has enough energy to wipe half of New South Wales off the map. With the pain of it. And of course, the anger, what are you supposed to do with your anger at the violation and the unfairness of it? And what it does is it just eats you. And I mean, physically, I can feel I'm being eaten from the grief of these situations. I haven't even told you what my father wrote about my mother. I started to mention that on top of everything. I mean, this stuff was just unbelievable. On the 4th anniversary of her death, when I was stuck in lockdown, because I'd found out that he was going to sue my sister Natasha, who was a single mother by this stage, living in a freezing cold fibro shack, freezing in winter and boiling in summer out the back of Tamworth, because she was homeless and she was a single mum and she didn't have any money and she had to move out of a place she shared with my dad at Palm Beach because he went away to get married and they were co-renting it. So it was all in his name. So he was suing her for back rent, and she just sold a shop that she'd bought in conjunction with my other sister, who's very, very wealthy. She married into wealth. And so both the very wealthy sister and my father jumped on board my single parent mother to try to sue her for the proceeds of the sale of the shop, despite the fact that both my father and my sister had married into somebody else's wealth. So when I rang him up and found out that his email to me saying that he was going to sue my sister Natasha was true, and I sobbed and cried and said, Dad, I think you need some help. I got off the phone and phoned a few people who knew him, and I wrote, as people here would, some people, only 1 or 2 people here would know, I wrote straight away because they knew my mother, so it would make sense to them how preposterous this accusation was about my mother. And it was venal and debasing and humiliating and degrading, and it was just so histrionic and so patently untrue. And I immediately sent it to people who are in my extended family. And I looked up my father's best friend's email and I thought, right, if you're going to do this to your daughter, then your best friends are going to know about what you're doing because they need to advise you here. You spent your life as a financial advisor and you weren't even financially well off. You've advised me all of my life and you nearly lost me 2 houses. Thank God I ignored his advice on my real estate purchases because I did rather well on those. And so I ignored his advice routinely because I'd kind of worked him out a while ago. But this was so histrionic and so egregious about my own mother, and it came in literally, it was like 10 to 10 in the morning, and that's when she drew her last breath on the 14th of June 2016. So they sent it. I say they because it seems like it might have been written by his wife. I couldn't work it out at first, and I did it was like being sucker punched. I can't describe it, and it was exactly what they intended. I sent it at the exact moment that my mother drew her last breath on the 4th anniversary. So this is like a month after I'd rung them up to see whether they were really going to sue my sister. And I went, right, okay. Now I've heard you say it's even worse than I thought. You're calling her names. You're calling her a user. You're calling her a Florence Nightingale come lately who only turned up to use her mother, even though her mother was dying of cancer and she was nursing her every day. And like you said, all these repulsive things about my sister and the way he said it as well, and he's like, go Donald Trump and poison all the Muslims, and like as if all the Muslims drink out of the same water supply. You know, he literally said poison their water supply, as if the water supply doesn't go to everyone else as well. This guy was 73 years old, he's now 80, so it's like fucking crazy, you know, just sort of Donald Trump batshit crazy. Right wing as well, the whole fucking 9 yards. And so I'm just like, once I established the veracity of it, I wrote to their lawyers and I said, if you don't cease and desist, I'm going to let all of your golf buddies know that this is what you're doing. You're the Gina Reinhardt of the Northern Beaches. You're suing your own child. And I'm going to let all of your neighbours know. So every morning when you walk out of your numbered little residences down in Newport on the beach there, that my father married into as the Wealth of P&O Cruises CEO who died. So his wife got it and then he married her. No shit. And so none of these people have made the wealth that they're sitting there enjoying while they're suing the wealth that my sister Natasha laboured. I mean, I want to throw up just thinking about it. It physically makes me sick. And so I said, if you do not cease and desist through their lawyers, I'm going to tell all the people you know, and then I'm going to send it to the residence unit number 1, the residence unit number 2. And so everyone who flanks you, you're going to have to look at them every day, and they're going to know exactly who you are. So they said, oh, we'll cease and desist. You have traumatised our clients so much they'll cease and desist. And I said, good, don't ever speak to me again. Blocked their email. So they made up a new email. My father did, I believe, and sent it on 4 or 5 weeks later on the anniversary of my fourth anniversary of my mother's death, to pay me back for standing up for a single mother that they were trying to sue. You can't make this shit up. I mean, you just can't make this shit up. It's fucking crazy. And all these people knew how much I had suffered from all the other people, but not one of them differed in their report that she is a loving, kind, educational, musical, fun, careful, helicopter parent mother. My sister didn't resile from that, Elise. My father said that's all he'd ever observed, and I was immaculate, and I am, always was, always will be, because he brought me up, and Mum was like that. So there's nothing I've done wrong as a parent, but when you read this material, again, 595/2014/2014. Go look it up. That's the ruling. Until I complained so vehemently to the legal aid and to the court system that I got her sacked off our case, and I got the right judge put back on, and his name is Dale Kemp, Federal Magistrate Dale Kemp. But by the time he got put back on, it was 1.5 years later, and I had a total nervous breakdown. And then was falsely diagnosed as psychotic, even though I wasn't. You can read all the reports. They're all there from Dr. David Starrick, Dr. Jason Pace, Dr. Winamalda Ranasinger, and Dr. Sam Borenstein. All of them saying nothing to see here except total devastation and grief and now major clinical depression. And that's hence the pension. And then I've got the police bashing on my door, as I've told you in previous broadcasts, when I try to give my daughter, who I haven't seen for 2 years, who's nearly died in a house fire with her negligent father, whose leaves are unattended at 8 and 9 and 10 and now 11 years old. And when I was meant to pick her up right now today and spend time with her, and I organised to send her a taxi, and she said, no, Mummy, I won't come. And I sent one last week as well, because I'm contesting the AVO that he put on me, and that's being heard as the police stuffed up the paperwork. It was meant to be heard on Melbourne Cup Day, but they fucked up again. So they've held it over till January next year. And all of these things require lawyers. Because if it's not clear enough, crystally, to you that my mind, while still functioning, is really broken by my heart's degree of the grief in my heart, I haven't held my children or seen them or held them or cuddled them or looked at them express themselves since Christmas Day. And they're 11 and 14, and before that it was lockdown for 3 months. I was stuck interstate. And before that,
I couldn't afford a house because I didn't have a job, so I had to go and live in Tasmania away from them because we don't have any housing affordability, and no one in my family was offering to help me out, not even to save my own house when I nearly bled to death. And again, I told Madeline didn't get to go to my mother's funeral because he tried to fuck me around about collecting her on my mother's funeral, and then on top of it, like, I did the right thing. I stayed around where it was convenient for them to live, and I didn't even ask for child support for the first 9 months of Madeline's life until about the time he stole my daughter off with this woman, Sonia Rogers. And of course, Sonia flicked him, back to that other story, she flicked him straight away as soon as I sent all of the data over to her mother, who Marilyn knew. Marilyn with two Ys knew, who'd established a centre for women escaping domestic violence. You can obviously imagine that what drove her to do that, because she probably, I would have guessed, had experienced it herself, maybe, or been around some people who had and thought it was a good thing to do with your $250 million inheritance. I certainly would think that. And, Dr. Anne Summers is the first woman in Australia and Sydney who established that in Glebe. She was Paul Keating's first women's advisor for women in the early 90s. And I send this stuff through to her and other people just to try to give them, just show them these snapshots of what's still going on for women around men's behaviour. Like, so I got the Turner fired off the case and I got Kemp put back on, but by that time I was in a mental health unit, falsely diagnosed as being psychotic, when in fact I was having a total nervous breakdown, as you would. As most people tell me, yeah, as you bloody well would. And so just to put the final knife in, like, it's not death by 1,000 cuts, it's literally like being horrifically macheted to death, only just slowly. They took my son on the wrong pretext. Like, I woke up, it's like, well, if my family had been available and weren't fighting, because I wasn't talking to them, it was like, screw you guys are all fucked, I'm not talking to you, to the point where I didn't even turn up to my mother's ashes interment 6 months after her funeral. They went to inter her ashes at Mona Vale, and I went to get in the car and I physically wanted to throw up, and I just couldn't go because I couldn't imagine looking my father in the eye after he'd said what he said about Anne's, you've got to cut him some slack because she was bonking another guy. It's like, what, you fucking insane? And I heard him say it to another man, like sneaking it in at her wake. Right, so adultery equals murder. You hypocritical fuckwit. Like, you should be dead by that, your own hypocrisy. I mean, just the insanity of these double standards of men's sexuality and their behaviour. And, you don't need me to direct you over to Andrew Tate, and like, this guy's outright preaching it. It's outright preaching this double standard of gender behaviour around sexuality and morality, and then murder and beating women. And I think he's got some sick little cult where he is a pimp, where he makes them prostitutes, even though he's simultaneously calling them whores if they've fucked more than 3 men in their life. And just this crazy fucking shit that I look out the window and there's obviously architects and a built environment and an entire civilization that's turning over with an economy out there, and I wonder how it's even happening when you look at the behaviours that are barely under the surface of these men, and you look at the widespread nature of this mentality, and then you see it in a 2017 female judge court ruling a 5-year-old child away from her own mother. So look, I've given you again a lot of stuff there. You can go away and check it all out. It's all true, unfortunately. And you can see the evidence of what I'm saying is the total love and devotion those children always had for me, and because they had it in spades from me, I couldn't hold them enough. I couldn't kiss them enough. I couldn't tell them I loved them enough. And so every single moment is just a living death. And by way of consolation, because the world is so horrific with misogyny in Afghanistan and Iran and Iraq and Syria, particularly Assad and Syria and Iran, and shooting women and bashing them up in so-called morality police because they don't have a fucking face sack on, beating them into submission and ruling them out of schools in Afghanistan. Like, if you don't think this shit is important, just fucking get out of my space. Don't even pretend to be a friend of mine on this, whatever it is, Zuckerberg data trawling marketing machine called Facebook. Don't even pretend, because your eyes aren't open and your ears aren't open, and so you turn on the news and then you watch Israel, supposedly the only democracy that's not a misogynistic nation in the entire Middle East, and they're just basically openly murdering 2.5 million people in the Gaza Strip, just murdering them to death with no water and no fuel or food or electricity. Like going, oh, look, there's an AK-47 and one uniform in one hospital. So this definitely proves that, these Islamic terrorists, I can't even fucking remember their names because I don't want to, are under the Al-Sheba hospital with that, Hamas are under the Al-Sheba hospital, and so we've got to bomb hospital. Good excuse here to just bomb the hospitals because they've already bombed other hospitals. Like, they've already. And I woke up and heard about this little boy whose parents had died, and both of his legs had been blown off, and his uncle is sitting there in a trolley, and the little boy is still being a little 2 or 3 year old boy, and he's still going, can I see mummy and daddy soon? You got to understand, you guys, you got to understand, if you are men in the Western world and you are nice, like you're kind, genuinely love your partner, you do have a big task on your hands, because you've got to get the fuck out and educate the rest of those motherfuckers, those sick, misogynist, murderous motherfuckers. Half the problem of that is that we don't even know if it's going to be you that becomes one of them, because look at what happened after 45 years of marriage, and someone that my mother loved like a brother, literally. And he loved her like a brother, and my partner at the time, Matt, said, I reckon that your mum's death sort of flipped him over the edge. But of course, I said in other broadcasts, you can't really keep using that excuse though, because even after he had months in jail to reflect on his actions, he still not only was unrepentant, but he tried to argue that he should be let out on or given a reduced sentence due to extreme provocation, like her having an affair with the man was extreme provocation, when apparently, according to family members, the last words out of her mouth were, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. I'd rather live with my sister, I'll live with my father, I'd rather be dead than live with you. And so he obliged her. In his rage, because his possessiveness and his rage and his ownership of her was really not even questioned for him. And that it is the underlying structural mentality of the patriarchy. And we see it here in this disgusting, like ironically made by a woman, ruling of the ideas of it is like that my interactions with other adults about what I think is fair and right in the world are being cited in a family law court case. And by the way, most people I know think that those ideas are fair and right. And the fact that I was going through all that turmoil, the murder and the hemorrhaging and losing my 5-year-old to a man who had a police record with other women doing it to them, and then these women in the court weren't believing me, the judge and the Lucia Vardanega, the court reporter who makes the independent report, which the judge worked off mainly. And so all of that was just, I had no control over the timing of any of that, particularly not a tumour in my cervix and my mum dying or a murder from, and then the timing of the court case. Oh, well, now you're on. It's been 2 years and you're on now. And I'm like, what? While all of this is happening? Yeah. And so I'm coming off angry and upset and defensive. And she's like, oh, I don't think you're well. And look at all this stuff you say. Oh, give the child away. What? Hang on. Look at the record of my great parenting and look at what other people are saying about it and my family members, and look at he's got no such record and he's abused everyone and that's on the police record, and look at what all the other women are admissibly saying about him, which you're choosing to rule out. So again, it's Saturday and Sunday and they are the hardest days for me. Because there's days when people are not meant to be at work and not at school. And I mean, every afternoon from 3 p.m. onwards, I'm hoping that they made it home all right. And I'm thinking what homework we'd be doing. I'm wondering what we cook for dinner, and I'm just running this parallel universe, and I'm just completely alone. And their lives are going. And so, finishing off, you wake up and you see a little boy who doesn't even know he's lost his legs. He's just a stump. And is now asking for his blown to smithereens by Israel parents. And you just go, you guys could not fuck this planet up. You men. You men, not all of you, just most of you, could not fuck this planet up more if you tried. You could not fuck up women more if you tried. You couldn't fuck up your GDP spends of $600 billion on nuclear submarines that aren't even going to be delivered for another 15 years until China's done whatever the fuck it wants in the Taiwan Strait. But you can't find money for universal childcare, which would liberate not only women's equality and equal dignified human rights, which you were meant to do a very long while ago, according to the UN Charter, by the way, but it would also give you money in your tax base, because they would go and earn money, and $1.87 for every dollar spent is the rough estimate that they have, the Australian economy. So it's like a deliberate decision not to give universally free childcare and buy $600 billion worth of the war machine, which is already redundant because it's not going to turn up until the game's over. More intelligence spend, like fucking Blind Freddy could tell you this. There's a whole bunch of missiles trained on various points of the Chinese shit show right now. Go and invest in them. Put some more. So grow them up and go, okay, you want to play this game, China? You want to come down and start throwing your weight around? We've got a whole bunch of missiles over here. We're just going to fucking double it. Like, that'd be a more intelligent spend. But no, the Australian government's got the whole, we've got to have the blue-collar jobs for the boys in the supply chain of these submarines. So we're going to give $600 billion to a result that doesn't even work anyway, because it's not going to be available on time. You know, Richard Marles, literally, when he was asked at the press club about it, he goes, oh, well, we've got to do something. And I'm like, oh, you're a genius. Yeah, true, we can't appease like Hitler was appeased and do nothing. But that doesn't mean that necessarily follows that you go and spend $600 billion on nuclear submarines. Because, by the way, that's one of the most poisonous types of nuclear energy as well. You've got nowhere to put it afterwards, but it's not even going to be delivered on time. But you want to still tell us, being 51% of the population, that we don't deserve, you can't afford, out of all of our fucking money, to give everybody universally free childcare. And of course, again, this, just to take it even further out than blown up kids in my particular situation, and the horror of war and what men do all over the world, because it usually is. I said it to a cop yesterday. I said, you know 97% of murders and rapes are committed by men, don't you? And he said, well, I don't agree with that. And he said, well, I don't agree with that. This guy's like in his 50s. And I said, mate, it's not up to you, mate. It's not up to you to agree with it or not. You don't get to choose your facts. They're measurable fucking facts. I left out the fucking bit. But I said these are measurable facts and global figures. And you went, oh, I don't agree with that. Like, well, of course you don't agree with it. That's probably why you're a cop, because you're not very bright, because you think that you get to agree about statistics of data of murder when we have institutions that just do that. That's what they do. They measure that shit. You know, Counting Dead Women is just a website alone that looks at dead women in Australia every week. But there's, of course, entire university professors and sections of all modern democracies that measure how people die, right? It's not rocket science. And he tried to tell me that he didn't agree with it. You're out, idiot. You don't get to agree. It's a fact. You know, it's not like a particle theory. It's not sort of like the best idea that we have until another mind-blowing model comes along 5 or 10 years later and everyone goes, oh, shit, hang on, look, we've just measured the background radiation rate of the entire known universe and dark matter, and boy, like 70% of what we thought we knew is wrong. Shit, better update that fact.
So it's not like a contestable fucking theory. It's not physics. It's not particle physics theory. It's not string theory. You know, it's bureaucracy. So you need to impose at this stage a matriarchy right over the top of the patriarchy, which is exactly what Macron was saying, and that's where Jordan Peterson jumped off on his little tete-a-tete, you know, with him. Oh, you can't impose that. It's not a meritocracy. It's like, well, neither is this, mate. Look at this. There's nothing meritorious about this shit fight that you've created on this planet with all of your wars and your bags over everyone's heads and your fucking poverty endemically slaying people. Like, what, you call that a meritocracy? You ugly, venal, lying, corrupt, asshole male misogynists. In most of the planet, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Syria, you know, Russia mainly, huge amounts of China, obviously. There's fuck all women over in the People's Party, holding up half of the sky, Mao said. Like my ass, they're not half of the fucking ruling class, though, when you look at the 3,000 people who sit in their parliament. No, they're not. It's just, wake up, you fucktards. I could run this world, literally, in a 12-week plan. Just sit down and put some, and the first thing would be universally free contraception for every woman on earth. Every woman on earth, shot in the arm that lasts 3 months, because then you would also bring down climate change as well as dignifying them with the opportunity to not be breeding cows and slaves to men's penises and ejaculate, because they can be raped into submission and are all over the world every day at very young ages. And that would give them the opportunity to be educated. And within 2 generations, 30 years, you'd halve the planet, right? Which would hugely impact climate change, wouldn't it? So, you know, this is, you could explain it to a child. If human beings are interested in a future on this planet, the first thing is the immediate rolling out of free contraception to every woman on the planet who wants it, not ruled over or presided over by any men in any government or any religion whatsoever. So you guys have got to get the fuck out of the fucking way. I'm coming for you. You know, we need an army of women to come for the idiots like Andrew Tate and the idiots like the Taliban and the idiots like Hamas and the so-called morality police in Iran, you know, bashing Amini to death for not having a sack on her face in the right way. I mean, who the fuck do men think they are? Who the fuck do you think you are? You know, when I grew up, the great insult that boys on the northern beaches would sign off was suck my dick. That's suck my dick. Can you imagine a woman saying that to you? Huh? Well, she is. It'd have to be clipped though, wouldn't it? How dare any of you run your war spends, like on top of all of the violence being done to women, and the lack of free universal childcare would be the second thing after, the availability of free universal childcare, universally free childcare would be the other thing that you would bring in on top of, first and foremost, free contraception globally for women, because that would just completely, profoundly, in the space of 30 years, revolutionise this planet. Now, where is that conversation in the international sphere? Hillary Clinton tried it. Before the Taliban got their second ground, she was in the late 90s, before 9/11, she was trying to mount that conversation, pardon the pun. But something else mounted her. And again, great President Bill Clinton still got his cock sucked by 15 female staffers, but if she'd been president instead of Trump, you can just imagine if it was proved that 16 male staffers performed cunnilingus on her. She'd be, but she's still a great president. Yeah, you reckon that would have been said? No, they just would have stoned her to death. Like Mary and Joseph. Remember the Bible? They were pretending they were married so that she wasn't stoned to death on her way in to give birth. That's how that went down. Immaculate conception. Listen to the bullshit that men make up. all in order to control women around the planet. And the height of it is, while we're finishing it off, your GDP spends are made on their females' unpaid labour. And they're rearing taxpayers for you, otherwise known as the Great Domestic Hoax, because your GDP measurements are made on unpaid female labour. So if you were actually triple bottom lining it and looking at all of the costs, I've raised and bred 3 Australian taxpayers, and for my efforts I've been crushed, and they've been stolen from me by a man who abused 3 women on the police record, and it's legal. And so here I sit today, home alone again. Just another day going by when I'm meant to be with my daughter and my son. And it's all going by very fast now. They don't tell you time accelerates, but it does. So much faster at the end, doesn't it? Anyway, so many topics. I see the relationship between all of them. I hope that I've articulated the nexus between those ideas. Unless you criminalise the theft of children by their other parents in this country, nothing's going to change to stop the fact that there are 10 people I know in my cohort who are in this situation. But they've got partners and jobs, and they've gone on to have families with other people, and they've got loving families and loving partners and meaningful work, and they've got new children. And then it's slightly different, but they're still broken from it completely, but it's slightly different. They've got more to occupy their time with. Unlike me. So if you've got any ideas about how to help me get out of this situation, I mean, the best way to get out of it is lawyers, and my house is on the market now. I can see homelessness coming up on the event horizon pretty quickly, because there's no guarantee that I'll win, because once they're away from you for so long, they're estranged, they're parentally alienated, and so the court's going to listen to them. And if they say no, I don't want to go back to mum, I'll just say, well, look, I'll just share you. Half would be fine. But there's a thing called make-up time that you're allowed to ask for. But lawyers help, like really good lawyers who know what they're doing. There's a guy who's so feared. He's a senior counsel. His name, I'll remember it in a minute. It's Jeffrey, it's not Jeffrey Robertson, it's the other one. It's the, I'm going to remember it in a minute. Anyway, people don't even go into court with him because he's so feared as being such a, he wipes the floor with people, so they just settle out of court. And of course that's what everyone wants you to do, because you don't want to take up the court's time. It's better to settle than to waste the court's time and go through with it, because particularly then it gets left to the judge as to what the decision's going to be, and someone can lose big time. But I've already lost everything that there is to lose, because I've lost the years of their lives that they were young and innocent in, and I'm never going to get them back. All the nights I could have tucked them into bed and cuddled them and held them and read to them and debriefed their day and taken all the opportunities, and now I can hear him in the laziness of their thoughts sometimes. It's like, no. And when I accidentally ran into my son recently, like I didn't know he was going to be where he was, and he literally, he hadn't showered for a long while, and he had a hole in his bag and his phone screen was smashed. I bought him an iPhone, and I hadn't had time to get a case, and I said, don't walk out of the house tomorrow, this is 2 years ago, without buying a case for it, because it's an expensive phone. Well, it was smashed and wrecked with no case on it, and he's so angry and hurt with everything, and the fact that I'm discussing it as well, it just makes it worse for him, because he doesn't want it known. Like, I understand that, but if I can't try for justice for me and for them, I can't change anything that will just allow this to keep happening either. Like, if you want to make this not happen to anyone ever again, like the letter I got from Katie Gallagher's office, we know this might come too late for you, but we hope it gives you some consolation that you've helped contribute to a change. And I'm like, well, it kind of does, but it doesn't really. I just want my children's lives back, and it'll never ever happen again. I'm sorry. I gotta go. Bye.